You know, a lot of people think that the reason that Quakerism seems to be struggling right now is because we're too theologically diverse. Some believe in God, some don't. Some love Jesus, others lean up to a more universalist stance. But what I want to suggest is something actually quite different, something maybe even a little uncomfortable. What if our real challenge wasn't theological diversity, but a cultural fear of commitment? Let's talk about it. So in lots of discussions that I've had with Quakers, both on the channel and in real life, people see that, numbers in Quakerism, like in pretty much all religious denominations, are declining. And one of the main reasons that people give for this is our message is unclear. And I don't deny that. I think that we can be better in marketing and promoting ourselves, and I've got whole plans of how to talk about that. But one thing that people tend to pick on is that we're too theologically diverse to hold ourselves together. And I just don't think that is true. One, because I thought this was quite a new argument. I thought this was something that we've been noticing in maybe the 21st century. But I've just finished a most beloved book. Those of you who follow me on social media will know that this book is possibly the most me book ever. Dark yellow is even my favorite color. So it's been literally perfect. But it was written in 1978 or something. And Stephen Alcott, the author, even then was saying that that could very well be the reason why Quakerism is struggling. But Quakerism has always been diverse. And I truly believe that diversity is our strength. But for it to work successfully, it requires patience, community, and a commitment for it to do well. And I'm going to argue that modern culture discourages all three of those things. I'd also like to say that all denominations have diversity as well. One might argue that maybe the spectrum in Quakerism is larger maybe than other denominations. But, if you look at Catholicism, say, there is a broad range of, somewhere like you have Father Martin on one side and the ultra-conservatives on the other side. They will agree probably on very little, and yet they all fit into this Catholic Church. So I don't think the wide range of diverse beliefs within Quakerism is the reason why numbers are declining. Firstly, if we look at maybe the period which saw the greatest amount of Quaker growth, so the early Quakers, the range of beliefs there was quite broad, and people really thought about it. There were these strange arguments about people arguing about whether or not to take hats off, or whether you're allowed to act out Jesus' entry into Jerusalem by walking into Bristol on a rainy day in October. Quakerism wasn't founded on a dogma or on a creed. In fact, it very much wasn't. But it was based on a shared spiritual practice of waiting worship, discernment, and testimony. So diversity has been nothing new, and is in fact kind of encouraged in Quakerism. And yes, especially in America, sometimes a little bit in the UK, but especially in America, these differences in belief have led to schisms, which obviously I don't think we do want. But if we look at the UK, I think that shows a Quaker community which has come through quite a significant amount of change broadly by listening to the divine, but ultimately has stayed connected. I think the real problem is that we've got a change in culture, and this culture isn't entirely new. I think it's being sent into overdrive by social media and all that sort of things. And this isn't going to be a sociological study into this. I think we're all very aware of this kind of culture that we're talking about. But this is a culture which values individual autonomy, that you get to choose, you get to live your life, and there isn't really anything that's allowed in this culture to pin you down if you don't want to be. And I think often commitment to anything is seen as a restriction rather than a liberation, or something to be proud of, or something to look for actively. Furthermore, I talked earlier about patience, and I think we are so used now to getting everything straight away. We are used to being able to get instant messages, instant feedback, same day deliveries, all this sort of stuff reduces our ability to be patient and to wait, even in terms of the way that people live their lives. I'm someone who probably, 60, 70 years ago, probably would be married, have kids, have stayed relatively close to home, and know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. In actual fact, I don't know these things. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm quite happy to have that openness and the ability to change what and how I do with my life. But I think it is a fundamental difference in terms of how people feel when they engage with a community, because I don't think we're even used to that. We're used to people coming in and out of our lives are way more than we were used to. That long-term belonging to a group is, well, something that I think people really want, but people don't know how to do, because how has that been modeled in our popular culture? It hasn't at all. So the problem, I feel, is that Quakerism, maybe more than other faiths, don't know, but Quaker worship definitely requires a deep commitment. Even just the worship, not even the whole thing, but waiting worship requires a deep commitment. It's not an instant win. You don't go in and then you start having this magical conversation with the divine straight away. That's not how it works at all. And then that just happens week on week on week on week. No, it requires a lot of patience, vulnerability, doubt, and presence. This isn't an easy fix to the wounds of the modern world. I think it's precisely what the world needs, but it's not an easy fix, and it requires, therefore, this commitment. And unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, this isn't instantly speaking to, I think, a lot of people who may be spiritually seeking, but I just don't think they know how to engage with what Quakerism is offering. You know, they want quick insights, they want quick answers, and not a deep practice. Or maybe they think they want that, but they don't know how to. They don't know how to do it. I've spoken often about how the environment of a meeting for worship just feels so different to anything that you experience in the modern world. How slow it is, how measured it is, how what you do and how you think is completely different. The world seems to sort of slow down. An hour of silent worship can feel a long time. So compare this to maybe things like self-help gurus or self-help apps. Not that they're necessarily bad. I use some of them myself. But I think it fits into this idea of it's an app, it's on your phone, it can provide you with solutions straight away. And so I think we're losing people and we're not gaining new people precisely because I think commitment is countercultural. It's really easy to spiritually shop, you know, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think we should, because lots of people, Matt Rosen used the phrase refugees from the popular culture. And I think that's really true. Lots of us are. Therefore, we do need to spiritually shop. But I just wonder how much time people give when they spiritually shop, if that makes sense. How much time do they give to Anglicanism, for example, or to Quakerism? Do they go and go, don't like it, and don't come back, like you would with a new pair of jeans or something? And I think especially because Quakerism is really challenging, I think it really challenges you. You are not given anything. And because of that, that can be quite scary in a culture which I think we've kind of been used to being given stuff. So I think people maybe leave, people don't come, not because they disagree or disagree with the diversity or anything like that. I think people just aren't very used to being spiritually accountable to themselves, to others. You know, I'm thinking an awful lot about welcome recently, and you know, this idea that perhaps welcome isn't the wrong word, but that people are needed. You know, we need people. And I want people to feel that they're needed in order to help engage initially with that commitment. People aren't necessarily going to make that decision to commit if they don't feel that they're welcomed or that they're needed. What are they offering? What do they feel that they can give you? That's a really good in, I think. It's easy to tolerate difference in belief or whatever if you know you can walk away at any time. If it doesn't really have any bearing on your life, if you can, like, well, this is too different now, I'm off. If that's always an option, then that's not very hard to do. But it is harder to do when you stay and when you do commit. And I think this requires a deep listening. If we commit, we are required then to really listen to other people who maybe have views which we find really challenging, and asks us to think, well, why am I challenged by this? And really get down and really discover not only things about yourself, but also about other people. But we can only get there if we get to that commitment stage. You know, there are things that, you know, my local meeting or yearly meeting have decided, which I've not necessarily always been initially for. And, you know, at that point, I could just turn around and say, well, the Quakers don't believe precisely what I believe anymore. I'm off. But instead, you know, sticking with it, going through that process, I think helps me grow and helps me maybe change my mind. And even if not, makes me kind of live with different opinions, which I think is a really important lesson in our modern society. You know, so much of our problems is because people refuse to consider that they might be wrong as Quaker faith and practice. asks us. So Quakerism doesn't offer easy answers, I feel. It offers a spiritual path, a journey, a way, but that path is only actually transformative if we walk it together. You know, in the past, people were in community because they had to be, and they had to get on with people because there was no option. Now we kind of have an option, and I think we try to get out of it. So that's the problem then. I really don't think it's about our diversity. It's always been there. We've always been diverse people, and I think that our practice helps us to deal with that diversity well. I think the problem is the cultural fear of commitment. And I think we just need to name that that's the reason, that's the problem. And maybe invite people to notice where that fear comes from. We all probably have it. We're all part of the world in this culture. And so where is it shown up? And maybe look at that. And maybe look, as we do with other things, look to challenge it and see what we can learn about ourselves and others from it. I think another thing is try and make, therefore, commitment to Quaker stuff doable. Small steps. If someone's struggling to come to local meeting, how can they look to maybe increase what they're currently doing and make them see the value of doing that? Similarly with committee work or eldering or clerking or whatever, how can they get to the next step? Incremental gains. Maybe reframe community not as a burden or something that you have to commit to in a negative way, but maybe like a spiritual gym. I know there are people that love going to the gym and love exercising. I don't, but people do it because they see the value in it, even though it's hard and that you have to commit to it. But in this gym, we exercise love and patience and truth. I think the modern culture also loves, and I'm guilty of it too. Guilty, maybe not the quite word. People love a challenge as well. So maybe your local meeting can have like a 30-day or 1-month challenge where you're going to commit in some way more than you usually do. I don't know what that might be. You might need to think about what that might mean for you. And I would always point people to look at the works of influential and inspirational Quakers and friends as well. So people like John Woolman, Thomas Kelly, people that make you feel proud and make you want to be a Quaker. And so I think this goes not just for newcomers, but even old timers, people, long-term friends. I think everyone who lives in the popular culture will feel this to a certain degree. And I think this is what stops us from truly being a community, a society of friends, and just instead of just people that just meet up once a week. So what do you reckon? Have there been times when you have felt unable to commit Quakerism? It might have been you took a long time to start coming to meeting, start coming regularly, to become a member. And how did you overcome that? Or if you're still struggling now, please let me know. Let's see if we can help each other. And I'll see you in the next video. See you later.
Thank you very much for watching the video. If you liked it, please do click on the thumbs up and the subscribe button to get more videos about Quakerism in the UK today. It really does help, and thanks once again.